Dzień dobry, assalamu alaikum, ciao, konnichiwa, bonjour, hola, good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Kenneth Tan. How are you? Hope you're well. A few things to talk about today, as usual, all about the UK property market. The thing that's on my mind at the moment is I just saw an article saying that they're going to change the rules for EPCs. Now, many of you will know, I've mentioned this before, there's a whole panic about 2025 and the new EPC requirements. The thing about this is, and this has got to be the thing you've got to get into perspective, is number one, we're talking about 31st December 2025, which is effectively 2026 until you have to comply with the C rating on an EPC. That's the first thing. And that's for existing tenancies. And in fact, if you've got, sorry, that's for new tenancies only. For existing tenancies, you have until 2028. That is, if the tenancy is continual from 2025 onwards, then you don't have to do anything about it. 2028 is when it comes in for all tenancies. So that's quite a long way away. Here we are in 2022. That's 6 years away. And when I say 2028, actually 31st of December 2028, which is 2029, which is 7 years away. So quite some time to go. And my belief is that they're already talking about changing the rules. And they're saying if you don't have a heat pump, if you don't have these green techs, if you don't invest in green tech, I think my suspicion is they're going to make this a little bit easier for landlords, because there's a real risk that they lose a huge plethora of landlords in this legislation, and they don't need that right now because they have a desperate shortage of homes to rent right now, and it's getting bigger. And I think the main thing for the government is going to be, how do we stop a mass exodus from the sector on the one hand and still keep the green credentials on the other? Well, if you make some of the EPC score points higher, such as remote thermostats, things that are fairly simple fixes, quick wins, then you could find that actually you can get to that C much easier. So I expect what we're going to see is a dumbing down of the EPC ratings between now and 2025, if not 2026 or 29, as mentioned. So it remains to be seen, but that's what I suspect may happen, because one thing the government can't afford right now is to lose any more private landlords. They're losing them by the bucket load. They're actually hemorrhaging them. So they need to put a stop to that, especially with a busy market. Now, a couple of other things going on. I talked yesterday briefly about the potential sale of council houses. Now, I want to be clear on this. I don't really have a problem with the idea of people that are in council housing having the opportunity to buy their homes. I think that's fantastic. Where that falls down for me is that then we lose another council home, which we desperately need. So for me, the only time that that works is if we then take that money, let's say we're selling a three-bedroom council house to someone at a discounted rate, take the profit that the government makes from that and then invest it in, say, 2 or 3 flats. That makes perfect sense, because that's what's required. Is a lot of the time it's smaller accommodations needed. But if they're just going to take the money and bin it and put it in some other part of government, that doesn't work for me. I just think it's, that's what they did in the 80s with Margaret Thatcher. And what happened was that we just depleted the housing stock without replacing it. And that is a massive mistake in legislation, in my view, if that's what they do. So I think my fear is it's kind of soundbite politics. They're going to want some cash. They're going to milk it for cash, and then they're going to use that cash for other things. I hope I'm wrong, but with a housing minister every year, you never know what one's going to do from one year to the next. So that's a bit of an issue. Now, Monetary Policy Committee meets this Thursday, talking about interest rates now. What will they do? So it's highly likely, we've already seen a speech from Boris Johnson this week about how he can't help everybody with mortgages, and mortgages are likely to go up. I think we can take from this that the decision's more or less made that interest rates will be going up. How much will they be going up? Well, the common consensus, if you look at the financial press, is they'll be going up by 0.25 of 1%. In fact, if you look at the Halifax, or if you're with the Halifax, you may have already received a letter saying your rate is going up. I mean, talk about presumptuous. They've actually sent out the letters in error. But there's no doubt that they know, as anyone in the business does, that it's highly likely the rates will go up, and it's likely they'll go up by 0.25%, bringing them to 1% for the first time in a very long time. What will the impact of this be? Well, if you're on a fixed rate 0, if you're looking for variable rates, then it will have an impact on the market. But there is a thing called a swap rate, which makes a difference. And at the moment, the swap rates for longer term interest rates are better than short term. What this basically means is that the 2-year fixes are sometimes the same cost or more than the 5-year fixes, because the longer term swap rates are lower. In other words, the anticipation is interest rates will go up for a while, and this is quite interesting, and then the anticipation is that they'll come down. So be really interesting to see how that pans out. But certainly that seems to be the expectation, is that we're in an inflationary cycle. At some point that will stop, it will reverse, And there's lots of inflationary pressures right now, but there's also lots of recessionary pressures as well. So the government needs to balance it both ways when inflation is high, but also when it's slowing down. So it'd be really, really interesting to see how that pans out. But yes, bad news. This week we are looking at an interest rate increase. If you're on a variable rate mortgage, you can expect it to hit your account pretty much your lender immediately. You'll probably get written to. They're very quick to put the rates up these days, I find. But if you're on a fixed rate, then you've done well, because you've listened to Ken at 10 long enough to know that we've been saying for the last 6 months you should have fixed your rate for a number of years, preferably 5. And with the long-term swap rates currently showing 5 rates plus as at the point where interest rates might come down again, that seems like sensible advice. But of course, it's not financial advice, because we're not qualified to give that. Now, 4 million more properties were pushed into the next stamp duty bracket as well. And this is by rising prices. And what that means is that government have now taken to the tax year end to March this year, £18.6 billion in stamp duty revenue. That's 6 billion more than the previous year. It's extraordinary amounts of money. And that's why people say, oh, they should do something about stamp duty. Well, they should, but they won't, because it's money for nothing. And, the way they're getting that money at the moment, when in a time when the government desperately needs it, it comes so easily, especially in a rising market. So I don't suspect there'll be any radical stamp duty changes for that reason. It's just too easy. The government just received the money. The solicitors are obliged to just put it into their account as soon as they receive the sale proceeds. They have to deduct any stamp duty and then pay it on immediately to the government. And the government just bank it. Really easy win for them, with no expense really, other than accounting for those funds. So that's where I see it. As far as the market's concerned this week, still really busy. Still a really strong time to sell. We've got some exciting properties coming to market this week. One north of £1 million, and one great first-time buyer, 2-bed, 2-bath ground floor right on top of the station, which we did a sneak peek on Facebook for yesterday. We'll be sharing some more details of that hopefully later on today. And then we've got another instruction coming on. Lovely little 2-bedroom freehold house. Great first-time buyer, first family home, if you can afford to jump into that freehold bracket. So those are things to come this week from us. Hope you're having a good week so far. Couple more valuations for me today. And generally, pleased to report, still really busy. As many of you will know, I'm suspecting a slowdown second half of this year. And certainly all the indicators are that's likely to happen. So if you're considering selling, the time is now. If not now, when? So if you need a valuation, do get in touch. Always happy to help with that. Even if you just need advice, want to chat about property, we love talking about it. That's why we do what we do here. So do get in touch, 0208 679 8601. Give me a call, or just drop me an email, ken@jamesalexander.com. Always happy to take your calls. I hope you're not suffering with hay fever as I am at the moment. Do look after yourselves, and if you can, your family and friends. We're back tomorrow with another edition. Until then, stay safe and well. Ciao.